Hello, my name is Anna, and today I want to share with you a remarkable experience I had a few days before my graduation. It was an intense moment that changed my perspective on life. Shortly before graduation, I attended a picnic organized by our senior class. During the event, I decided to swim alone to a raft. Everything seemed normal until I started to feel strong cramps. In a matter of minutes, I was overcome by an overwhelming sensation of pain. I was stuck at the bottom of the lake, desperately struggling for a breath of air. My whole body was in agony. Every cell seemed to be crying out for oxygen. The situation rapidly worsened, and I realized that I was drowning. It was a horrible and frightening process. The pain was unbearable and the despair indescribable. Suddenly, as my consciousness began to fade, I heard a voice inside my head. It called me Anna and said that I needed to rest for a moment. I responded to that voice, saying that I didn't want to rest, even though I was exhausted. Then something extraordinary happened. I died and entered an intense, comforting light. The experience was brief, but very real. Soon afterwards, I came back to life. This experience left me with profound reflections on the fragility of existence and the importance of valuing every moment. I needed to emerge in order to breathe. As I tried to get up, I realized that I was stuck in the mud. My hands were stuck in the mud, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get them free. I was immobilized. Just then, the voice spoke to me again. Anna, you can continue fighting, but would you like to rest for a moment? Reluctantly, I told the voice that I would agree to rest for just 1 minute, and then I would keep trying. I let go of the fight. As soon as this decision took shape in my mind, I felt myself being pulled out of my body. I looked down and saw my body still stuck in the mud, but I was no longer there. I felt myself in a new body, warm and free from the cold and mud. I was filled with an indescribable feeling of love and peace. Suddenly, I found myself in a place that seemed to be outside of time and space, an ethereal realm. The atmosphere was bathed in a soft, golden light that enveloped everything in a warm, serene glow. The peace I felt was overwhelming, completely unlike anything I had ever experienced. It was in this tranquil setting that I encountered beings of light. They were entities made of pure light, radiating a welcoming and benevolent presence. They looked at me with deep understanding, and although there were no words, I felt that I was being accepted and loved in a profound and unconditional way. This encounter with the luminous beings left me with a feeling that there was much more to the universe than I could ever have imagined. However, in some inexplicable way, I could see that these beings had both human and divine characteristics. They emanated such profound love and wisdom that they immediately put me at ease, despite the surreal situation. Among these luminous figures, one stood out in a special way. His presence was both imposing and gentle, and his light radiated a more intense and penetrating glow. When this figure approached, I felt a deep sense of awe and admiration. Even without words, his message was clear and touched my soul deeply. I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I was standing before Jesus, the embodiment of divine love and compassion. His eyes, filled with infinite kindness and understanding, met mine, and in that instant, all my fears and doubts vanished like smoke in the wind. Jesus held out his hand, and although there was no physical touch, I felt an immense transfer of warmth and tranquility. His presence communicated much more than words could express, conveying a sense of security, love, and purpose. He made me understand that I was safe, that I was loved, and that I still had a purpose to fulfill. Although he didn't use words, his communication was perfectly understandable to my soul. I understood that he was telling me that the next few years would be full of challenges, misunderstandings, and great destruction. However, I felt that he was also giving me a message of hope and resilience, assuring me that I would have the strength and guidance to face whatever lay ahead. His presence left me with a sense of peace and a renewed determination to continue my journey with courage and faith. He told me that his children must arm themselves with prayer to ensure that only God's will is done. It was then that I understood that the next 6 years would be a time of great trial for Christians all over the world. He charged me with the responsibility of sharing this message with everyone. Suddenly, I felt a gentle tug and, in the blink of an eye, I found myself in the middle of a battlefield. The sky was darkened by thick smoke, and the air was saturated with the acrid smell of burning debris. All around me, I saw soldiers from different eras and nations, all with expressions of pain and anguish on their faces. The ground beneath my feet was covered in the traces of countless battles, broken weapons, torn uniforms, and the bodies of those who had fought and died. The cries of the wounded and dying echoed around me, forming a haunting chorus of human suffering. Their pain felt like my own, a deep and overwhelming sadness that seemed to have no end. Then the scene changed, and I found myself transported through different times and places, each marked by conflict and destruction. From ancient wars, where battles were fought with swords and shields, to modern battles with tanks and guns, the devastation was the same. Each scene was a testimony to brutality and human suffering. The message he gave me was clear: humanity would face difficult times, and it would be essential for Christians to unite in prayer to face these challenges. As I passed by these scenes of conflict, I understood the depth of the suffering and the urgent need to seek peace and reconciliation. The weight of the mission I had been given became clearer, and I felt a renewed determination to share this message with the world, so that everyone could be prepared and strengthened through faith and prayer. The toll of human lives lost was devastating. The pain of families torn apart and the despair of communities left in ruins was palpable. I saw faces from every corner of the world, men, women, and children, all trapped in the merciless grip of war. It was a relentless cycle of violence, where each conflict fed the next, leaving a trail of death and desolation. The suffering was overwhelming, a weight that pressed heavily on my heart. Tears streamed down my face, silent witnesses to the endless tragedies unfolding before me. Jesus then spoke again, this time without words. His thoughts penetrated my mind with clarity and compassion. Man will pray about man until man prays for man, he said. I understood that the vision was not only a representation of the past and present, but also a warning for the future. Suddenly, the scene changed, and I found myself standing on a high cliff overlooking a vast expanse of water. The sky was dark and heavy with clouds, and the dense air promised an impending storm. Below me, the ocean roared furiously, its waves crashing against the shore with terrifying force. I watched in horror as the water began to rise, swelling and overflowing onto the land. The vision unfolded rapidly, showing me floods swallowing up towns and villages on different continents. At one point, I was in a bustling city, watching people desperately running for higher ground, their faces marked by fear. The water was rising relentlessly, swallowing up buildings, cars, and everything in its path. I could hear the desperate cries for help, the frantic pleas of parents searching for their children, and the haunting silence that followed as the floodwaters claimed their victims. I was then transported to rural landscapes, where vast fields of crops were submerged under the relentless tide. The loss was not only of human life, but also of the livelihood on which the communities depended. Livestock and wild animals were swept away, leaving a void that extended beyond the physical to the very core of these communities' survival. I understood that these visions were an urgent call to humanity. The need for unity, prayer, and compassionate action has never been clearer. Every scene, every cry of despair, and every tear shed reinforced the urgency of awakening to a new consciousness, where compassion and solidarity were the pillars for facing the challenges ahead. Their bodies were dragged into the abyss, leaving the smell of death in the air, a dark reminder of the destruction brought by the flood. Before I could fully comprehend the magnitude of the devastation, the view changed again. I was now standing at the base of an imposing volcano, its peak shrouded in smoke and ash. The ground shook beneath my feet, and I watched, amazed and terrified, as the volcano erupted with a deafening roar. Molten lava gushed out, forming a river of fire that consumed everything in its path. Entire towns and villages were buried under the scalding flow, their inhabitants unable to escape the inferno. It was then that I understood that there would come a time when all these catastrophes would occur simultaneously, during an era marked by humanity's greatest sins. As soon as he said this, the vision changed once again, and I found myself standing on solid ground, surrounded by towering skyscrapers and busy streets. It was a familiar sight, of a thriving city, full of life and energy. But this calm was deceptive, a mere prelude to the chaos that was about to unfold. Without warning, the ground beneath my feet began to shake. At first, it was a subtle, almost imperceptible vibration. But within moments, it intensified into a violent tremor that sent people and structures into a state of panic. I watched in horror as the earth opened up, swallowing entire buildings and leaving gaping chasms in its wake. The sound was deafening, a cacophony of shattering glass, crumbling concrete, and the anguished cries of those caught up in the destruction. The earthquake was relentless, its devastating force tearing through everything in its path. Skyscrapers, once symbols of human achievement, toppled like fragile dominoes, reduced to piles of twisted metal and debris. As I moved through the vision, I was transported to different parts of the world, each scene more devastating than the last. In one moment, I was in a city in the United States, witnessing a massive earthquake wiping out entire neighborhoods. The ground buckled and gave way, causing cars to veer off the road and people to run desperately in search of shelter. The magnitude of the destruction was almost incomprehensible. Throughout all these visions, the light remained by my side, its presence a constant in the midst of the chaos. Her voice, calm and steady, was a point of reference in the maelstrom of catastrophic events. She guided me, conveying a message of resilience and hope, even in the face of so much destruction. I understood that these visions were an urgent call for humanity to wake up, unite in prayer and compassionate action. The need for solidarity and preparation for the challenges ahead has never been clearer. Every scene, every cry of despair, every tear shed reinforced the urgency of a new consciousness, where compassion and faith were the pillars for facing the difficult times ahead. The noise and confusion was interrupted by a clear, serene voice. "Not only will there be more than you have seen," he said, "but there will come a time when everything will happen at once. This will come during the era of humanity's greatest sins." His words were a terrible prophecy, a warning of a future where natural disasters would converge catastrophically. As the vision continued, I was drawn to a particularly devastating scene. A great earthquake in a place called Eureka. The ground opened up with a force that shook the very foundations of the earth. Buildings collapsed in on themselves, and the landscape was changed forever. Amidst the devastation, there were signs of life. People were coming together. There will come a time when all this will happen at once. It will be a time of great tribulation, but also of great opportunity. His message was clear, a call to action for all of humanity. He then revealed to me the greed, arrogance, and indifference that have marked the whole of human history. Wars fought for power and wealth, leaving trails of destruction. Injustices perpetuated over generations, fed by an insatiable thirst for domination and control. The unbridled exploitation of the Earth's resources, with no regard for the consequences for future generations. Jesus repeated, "Man will pray about man until man prays for man." And throughout this process, I was there. Suddenly, I found myself on the beach, with my friends pushing the water out of my lungs. I was coughing and regaining consciousness, and tears were streaming down my face. Everyone thought I was crying because of the pain of drowning, but in fact I was crying because I was no longer in the light. I was back in my body, back on Earth. I wanted to be in the light. During this whole episode, from the moment I started sinking into the water and mud to the moment I was coughing water out of my lungs on the beach, I lost consciousness. I wasn't aware of every microsecond of that time. To be in the light was to be enveloped in unconditional love. Unconditional love means unconditional forgiveness. Unconditional forgiveness brings everlasting joy, an unparalleled sense of peace. Thank you for listening to my experience to the end. Please like and share this video, And if you're new to our channel, subscribe to continue receiving uplifting content. Thank you very much.